was always self-taught when it came to swimming. I never had a coach, never swam in a pool until I think it was always in the sea, back in Romania or in France, where I lived in the first time. That's for the first time. And then I picked it up by watching people and just, being able to crawl away. And you could see in that video what the result of that was. But I never improved. It was something I did in my teens and then kept me from drowning. And there was a funny event once on a holiday when we went with my wife in Greece. I was swimming away, and I didn't think of myself as being a really awful swimmer. But someone just zoomed past me swimming. I thought they must be wearing fins or some motor or something, because they were so fast. And it got me curious. So I looked on the internet to see what happens underwater. They never piqued my curiosity. When you look at swimming, at the Olympics and so on, most of the footage is above water, and most of the swimming happens underwater, right? And when I looked it up and I saw the plethora of technique and things that happens and that can be improved, so that got me curious, and I said, fine, let's find a few videos and maybe I can try to mimic those and try to imitate them. And I discovered a few things that blew me away. One, because I'm a mathematician, on my work side, on my professional side, and I discovered that for me, swimming is almost the opposite of mathematics. Is that the theory is so simple. Is you look at a video, and for instance, your videos, when you explain the drills and so on, it looks very intelligible and very easy and so on. And the moment you try to do it yourself in the pool, it feels horrible because you can't replicate it, and you feel that it's not working as well. Whereas in mathematics, it's sometimes the opposite. Is that you see something happening in real life, like an experiment. And it just happens. You can see it works. You can see that it's true. And then when you try to prove it mathematically, it can be a horrendously difficult task. So when I was through that journey of learning technique, and I realized that it's an incredibly technical sport, and the amount of things that the brain has to coordinate. And as an adult, I found that to be much harder than sports that I learned when I was young, when you rely more on your intuition. So here my brain was constantly overloaded when I was trying to do things or trying to focus on one thing, and everything else fell apart. Like my legs were not doing anything correctly anymore because I was focusing too much on the arm and the breathing and the rotation, everything else. So I quickly realized that it's so overwhelming as an adult to try to coordinate everything. And you have to focus on things at a time, try to be patient and so on. And you don't have the luxury of being, a 4-year-old and being told, you're doing that wrong, and then change that, and then you go, okay, I'll change it, and it changed, and it's fine, and then no longer think about it. I was asking my mates at the swim club if they remember learning how to swim, and most of them said, no, I don't remember exactly. I don't remember the process. We just went through it. We did it, and now it's muscle memory. So translating that mental effort, brain effort, into muscle memory was an incredibly rewarding journey for me. Maybe I don't know, personality, or because I'm an academic, but I found the challenge itself to reprogram the body. Essentially, you have to fight with your brain at the same time to let go and to allow feeling to take over, and then gradually translate into muscle memory, if you know what I mean. Mm. And I'm sure you've discovered this while working with adults all the time. It's harder for them to change things. In my case, I might have been luckier that I didn't have swimming background to have to change something that I had been doing for a long time. I kind of started fresh, but still I had to change that horrible swimming that I had when you saw in my first video into what I'm doing now. And it was very rewarding. In my opinion, I don't think humans were born to swim. Almost everything we do optimally in swimming, I found to be done nowhere else in life. I mean, there's nowhere else in life where we do this. And, all sorts of movements. You can't breathe whenever you want. That takes out 90-something% of all other sports. So it's an interesting challenge that I really, really enjoy. The fact that I'm reprogramming my body and I'm trying to teach my brain to let go, translate all that into muscle memory. And I have to trick my brain into doing that, because I discovered I can't convince it to let go. Maybe that's just me, but the process in the end, it translates into finding or constructing sets that rely on that process of doing things gradually. So you focus on some things at first, or, one or two technique elements, and then you maybe increase effort gradually and so on until your brain can't really keep up, think about it too much and so on, allowing muscle memory to take over. And I can talk about some of my favorite things later on, but let's say that was the process. What actually happened was I progressed very quickly in the first 2 or 3 months. I found some more videos that I could give you. I think 1 or 2 months after I started with your videos, with your free videos online, I was already able to swim maybe less than 40 seconds on 50 meters, which was previously unheard of for me. Within maybe 4 months or so, I was able to swim in the like you saw me in that second video when I was in the flume, and I went to that flume session to try to discover things that I'm doing wrong and see myself, because in the UK you're not allowed to swim in public pools. Sorry, you're not allowed to film yourself in public pools. So I had to find other solutions for that. But I would say within 4 or 5 months, I went from 2 minutes 30 per 100 meters down to maybe 1:30. And I can't say that I remember all the things that helped me improve along the way, but I remember some things very clearly, the stuff that I struggled with. And the moment I realized that I can't rely on YouTube videos anymore, that I need to see myself and I need other people to see myself and give me more prompt feedback, as in, I can see you're doing this wrong now, go back and do it this way, rather than having to wait a few weeks, maybe someone sees my video and then come back and so on. The immediate feedback process, I found to be extremely rewarding. So I flew out to different countries. I wasn't able to find much help within the UK. Masters clubs have a routine of their own, and most of the master swimmers, have swimming backgrounds, so coaches are already very full, and there wasn't much available. Camps I found to be on the expensive side at first, and I was really interested to get to be working with someone one-to-one and get that immediate feedback and work together and so on. What you would do in a camp, I would imagine, but even more attention to myself. So I flew to Romania, found a coach. He's a former national champion 400 meters, by the way. His name is Alex Nakshuk, and brilliant guy. We bonded very quickly, and we spent a few days together. But we were a few hours in the pool every day, and I remember that as being one of the highlights of my swimming journey. Is the fact that you have that immediate feedback, but that aside, you get someone to see the things, the biggest things that you're doing wrong or you could improve, telling you how to improve them and so on, and going back again. And the other part is adapting to the swimmer, which is something that you talked about in many videos as well. Is that there's no recipe, right? Every swimmer is different, and you have to be able to see what a particular swimmer struggles with and then adapt to be able to help them, rather than prescribe things. Like, you go through this program and see what you come up with, because most of us as adults don't start from scratch and are no longer 4 years old. So that improved a lot of things at the very beginning, but you live and learn. Learned a lot of lessons along the way, but maybe rather than allowing me to ramble on, we can let the discussion flow and take some questions from you, because I'm very interested. I'm very curious to see what you'd like to find out.
Yeah, no, well, thank you very much for that. That gives me a lot to go with, and a couple of questions that come to mind. So, what did you first notice when you saw that video of yourself swimming, or when you had that moment where you wanted to get better at swimming? What was the first 1 or 2 things that you thought you had to do to get quicker? Because that progression, that first 3-4 months, is a very big jump in speed. So, what were some of the main things there that you realized you had to change?
That's a very good question. You're challenging my memory right now. It's easy to say now what I noticed in that old video. What are the big things that should be improved? But back then, when I looked at my video, I don't think I noticed that many things, because I didn't have knowledge about swimming and didn't speak to anyone to tell me what the things should be, what the big things are to be improved. But I was noticing that my arms were almost completely straight. So the moment I was entering the water, I was just plodding along, and that was a big difference to what you were showing. So I learned many technical terms from you in the beginning, the high catch, high elbow, and so on, blah, 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 all that. And I realized, well, it makes total sense. You just first get into a position, then you want to push water behind you rather than pushing down. Pushing down doesn't propel you at all. So that was one thing that I was trying to improve a lot. And I can answer one of your questions, is that I remember struggling with that side of my journey in the first weeks very much. The fact that I got so used to pushing water down that I was relying on that motion for support to keep my body horizontal. And the moment I was trying to get into your high elbow position, I felt like I was sinking because I didn't have that pushing down in the water feeling, and I had to overcome that. And that took a long time to switch from that slow windmilling that I was doing to a proper propelling position. Breathing, I don't remember struggling with that much. Kicking was a struggle and still is, and body position still is an issue because now I'm trying to get very fast, and I notice that I'm still not as horizontal that I would like to be. But yeah, I think that sinking feeling, the fact I was windmilling and pushing down rather than trying to push water behind me. And the moment I was trying to push water behind me, I felt like I was sinking because I didn't have the support anymore.
And in terms of what you feel like you're doing in the stroke now, how does that change from a year, 2 years ago? Like, what are the things that you're feeling for or trying to do now compared to when you first started?
You mean what I'm working on to improve right now, for instance?
Yeah, and how you, because one of the things you mentioned is that going from kind of overthinking to having to tune into how your body feels. So what are some of the things you're working on, and what are the sensations that you're trying to work towards,
Right.
that you know is a good stroke?
Yeah, that's another very, very good question. So the thing that I feel is holding me back a lot right now is body position. So I don't have a let's say an optimal body for swimming, in that my legs are very long, my torso is shorter. So my center of gravity, my center of mass is actually towards the legs. If I try to, let's say, float face down in a cross position where you're neutral, and some people are just able to remain horizontal above water and the legs are not sinking, my legs go instantly, right? And this is a test that a new friend I made was a former Canadian Olympic trial, and an incredible guy. So he explained this. So some people have the body for swimming, and that helps them more, and they don't need to rely on the kick. Those who don't, like me, need to rely a lot more on the kick and on the core to keep you up. You would want to be as horizontal as possible. In my opinion, I think if you were to rank what the most important things are in swimming, I would rank this to be very highly. I'm not sure what else could be higher, maybe. But being as horizontal as possible, because anything else that sinks means you drag water. You drag yourself through water, so you create drag. So you would want let's say, your head and your hips and your heels to break the surface when you're swimming freestyle. And that would ensure a horizontal position. My hips and my legs are sinking. And I've been more recently working more on that, trying to find a way to bring those up and to understand why that happens. And in my opinion, the reason why that happens is that I haven't yet developed a good synchronization between my stroke and my kick, as well as the rotation. So, that hip-driven stroke. So you would like your kick to drive your stroke and to drive the rotation. I'm trying to get there. Initially, I focused on learning a 2-bit kick a lot more than any other type of kicks. And I found that to be very hard because I wasn't able to coordinate the 2-bit kick either. And it's much harder than it maybe is for others. It was very hard for me. But I got there in the end somehow. But now I have this new problem because I don't really like long distance swimming. I know you're the opposite, but I like sprinting. And in sprinting, you need to have a very powerful kick, and your legs need to be working, overtime. So I would like to learn a 6-bit kick, and that 6-bit kick to actually work with my stroke rather than just be erratic. And you need a good coordination. So I'm trying to learn that coordination. So what do I do, or what I'm in the process of discovering what works for me? I've discovered some things that I think work better for adults than kids. The kind of sets that I've been designing for myself with help from others is, let's say you take an hour, and I focus for the first 20 or 30 minutes on doing technique work. And I focus on just one or maximum two technique elements at a time. I don't try to do more, because then it's too much for the brain. And if I do two elements, then they should be correlated. If it's, maybe breathing and catch, or stretch and catch, things like that. But if I'm doing kick or rotation, I usually stick to just one. The drills, so you do a lot of drills for the 20 minutes, and I think it's important to take time with the drills. I know some people say that you should do drills at speed in order to start learning, and that didn't work for me very well. But what I do is you work on drills for about 20 minutes. You mix drills with swimming, so you don't just do only drills. Then for the last 40-30 minutes, I try to do something that I was mentioning before, is where I go gradual. Let's say 25 lengths of 25 meters or 50 meters, and I start with them doing as slowly as possible, and I try to hit exact times. If I do 25 meters, I would start from maybe 20 seconds per 25 meter, and I try to hit exactly 20 seconds. So I force myself to go easy so that I can focus on everything I'm doing, but I'm mostly focusing on just that technique element that I worked on for the first 20 minutes. So I do that maybe 5-6 times, and I take enough rest between the 25s. I don't want my cardiovascular system to become a limiting factor, so I don't want to push myself too much, because I'm working on technique still. And on the next 6 lengths, I decrease that to 19 seconds. And again, I time myself, and I want to hit exactly 19 seconds. It also helps me to learn pace, so what 19 seconds feel and so on. But again, I'm focusing on rotation. For every length, I focus only on just rotation. I don't care about my arms. Maybe my arms are not optimally doing things and so on, but I focus on that. Or the kick tempo, kick synchronization. I want to feel the kick driving my stroke and helping the rotation. And then I drop to 18 seconds, and then I go to 17 seconds, and 16 and 15 and so on, until I reach my PB on whatever that length is. And every time I drop 1 second in swim speed, I also increase my rest time between lengths. Again, because I don't want my cardiovascular system to limit me. And I found this to be very helpful for me. I was able to improve a lot with this kind of sets, because it kind of tricks my brain, going from one stage where my brain could think about everything that was happening, especially that technique element, to going full out, but very gradually losing control and allowing muscle memory to take over feeling. And you insist on this for maybe a couple of weeks. I think it's important when you work on drills to insist on things and to allow enough time to this. So that worked for me. That allowed me to progress a lot. And you take one technique element and you insist on that, and you do just that with this kind of sets. In my case, it was speed, because I like to work on speed. But if you want to focus on other things, like long distance swimming and so on, you focus more on efficiency. For instance, you focus on the technique of the stroke, or your 2-bit kick, or no kicking at all if you want to work your core a lot and to streamline through and so on. It worked a lot for me, right? And even small things like finishing the stroke, at the very end, past the hips, I want to still be able to push water. Things like that. You shove 1 second here and there, and it's rewarding enough. But yeah, that's one approach that really, really helped me.
The thing I really like about that is when you force yourself to go a specific time, you're really developing those different gears that you can shift between,
yes.
Which a lot of people, especially who are newer, it's something that I see that they tend to struggle with. They have just got that one speed. And so when you're having to be that specific about what pace you're going, then you're going to figure it out what you need to do to get quicker. And especially I think in the early days, when technique is usually the worst when you first start, and it's going to get better as you progress as a swimmer. But in those early days, technique's such a big aspect of it that it's really worthwhile taking that time. And especially if you're sprinting. So, if you're doing longer distance stuff, if you're doing triathlon, you're going to need to have that base level fitness and swim strength to get you through the event. But if you're sprinting, well, it's very much about being refined with your stroke, and it's not about doing long distances necessarily. So I think that approach can be so much better for sprinting too. So
I like what you touched on just now, because it helps during races as well. So, every race has a certain strategy to it, unless you're doing a 50 where the focus is not to focus on anything, you just go. But if you're doing anything else from 100 onwards, you have some strategy on each length to follow. Knowing what each pace feels like, having learned that, and you can actually strategize better. If you want to go slower or faster, and you want to bring your kick into the third part of the race, or be more efficient, you have strong, longer strokes on the first part of the race. Whatever you would like to do, your body already knows how it should feel. So I think it's easy to strategize, and it works for longer distances, and there's more strategy on longer distances, obviously. For open water, I don't know. I never competed in open water. I just swam open water. But from mates that are doing open water, there's strategy there as well, depending on the race, and if it's 5K or more, and so on. But yes, I think you're perfectly correct. It's worthwhile teaching your body to know what each pace feels like.
At Effortless Swimming, our mission is simple: make swimming more enjoyable. Whether you're training for your next race, swimming for fitness, or just love being in the water, we're here to help you swim faster, smoother, and with more confidence. And one thing that can make or break a swim is your goggles. If you've ever struggled with foggy lenses mid-session, you know how frustrating it can be. That's why we created the Effortless Swimming Hydro Clear Anti-Fog Goggles for long-lasting, crystal clear vision. I've been using them myself, and the difference is night and day. And I'm not the only one. Deborah swam 36 kilometers down the Derwent River, and the entire time her vision stayed crystal clear. No fog, no frustration, just an uninterrupted swim. So what makes the Hydro Clear goggles different? It's all in the technology. Unlike ordinary anti-fog coatings that wear off over time, Hydro Clear super hydrophilic technology is built into the lens material itself. Here's how it works. Instead of fog forming as tiny droplets, water spreads evenly across the lens, creating a thin film that prevents fog from even starting. And the result? Consistently clear vision, swim after swim. And the durability? Our lenses are CNAS certified. Tests show that even after 2,000 rubs with a wet cloth, under a 200 gram load, the lens stays fog-free. No gimmicks, just serious performance that lasts. Using them is simple. Just wet the lenses before putting them on, and you're set for a fog-free swim. Ready to see the difference yourself? Get 15% off your first pair of Hydro Clear Anti-Fog Goggles with the code PODCAST at shop.effortlessswimming.com. That's 15% off your first pair of goggles with the code PODCAST at shop.effortlessswimming.com. We also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you're not happy with the goggles for any reason, you can simply return them for a refund. Don't let foggy goggles ruin another swim. Try Hydro Clear today and experience clear vision from start to finish. And one of the things with sprinting, and I think Laura Quilter might have mentioned this, but it's controlled chaos. It's where you've got to you've got to let yourself go, but within that letting yourself go, you've got to have that form and control to it. And just in terms of developing the kick, a couple of things that I've seen working well for people is like with the kicking. So kicking at different angles. So kicking on the side, kicking on the back, kicking on the front, working the kick in different directions is one. And I think whether or not it's sprinting or longer distance, like just some resistance work with the parachute, it can be really helpful. And then in terms of,
I'm smiling. Sorry to interrupt. I'm smiling because that's precisely one of the sets that I'm working on now, suggested by someone else. The technique part that I'm doing in the first 20 to 30 minutes has exactly that. Half Supermans on one side, then at the angle, kicking up, rotation, but yeah, kicking at different angles so that you're spot on.
Yeah, good. Nice.
I would like to pick ahead on more things than this, but yeah, you're totally correct. Also, something that I would want to say is that I'm very enthusiastic about swimming because I'm still learning, and I find it incredibly rewarding. And when I talk about it, it sounds like I'm talking with authority. I have no idea what I mean. I've learned a lot, and I love it. But in no way I'm an authority on this. But it's just enthusiasm. I wouldn't want people to confuse it with trying to teach anybody anything. I'm still learning myself. It just sounds authoritative, but it's not. I'm just enthusiastic about it.
Well, you can speak from your own personal experience though, having gone from 230 down to 106. I mean, that's a big jump, and I think most people would be pretty happy to have that result in their swimming. So it's people can take a lot from that.
I think it's very, very, very doable. As you probably discovered working with adults as well, there's a mental block as well where they start with the idea that I'm never going to be an Olympian or you're never going to compete against them. And it's fine. It's perfectly fine. But that doesn't mean you can't improve down to maybe even a minute. I think it's important not to put any limits when you start. You just discover how low you can go. And that's an incredibly rewarding journey in itself. And then you discover that you can actually compete. You can go to meets, and then you meet incredibly gifted and experienced people as well. So you learn a lot. There are things that I would say are important that I would have loved to do, would love to know. But at the same time, you can't discover everything at first, It's a journey. But I wasn't taking warm-up seriously. Not warm-up in the pool. I mean, warm-up, you warm up your body because, as adults, I think we need more warm-up time. And I developed a little bit of injury from straining my shoulders. I have an anatomy imbalance on my right side. My rib cage is a bit sunk on this side, so it impinges on my shoulder, and so my shoulder anatomy on the right side is a bit odd. And swimming doesn't cause any injuries, but it makes it worse because there's thousands and thousands of rotations in each session. So stretching before sessions, I think, is important. I think everybody should do that and take it seriously. Muscles are not that big of a problem with age. Apparently, they adapt very quickly to age and to effort, depending on the age. But tendons is not the same ballpark. Tendons take a lot longer to warm up, and you want them to be elastic. Most of the injuries are most of the lasting injuries and the problematic injuries are in tendons, and that's what I've been developing. Now I'm recuperating. I've been working with physios and so on, so I've been doing that. And also then, besides that, some land training. Those kids who started at 4 years old, they had a lot of land training as well, and they've been developing their shoulder muscles and back muscles a lot for swimming, and their bone structure also evolved with swimming, so it enables swimming in a different way. Someone who takes swimming up like me at 42 years old and doesn't have those tendons and muscles already developed to help them and so on. In my opinion, important to look after them and develop them. So besides swimming, besides what you do in the pool, I would encourage taking time to work on the shoulder and back muscles. And if you lack the time to do too much, just do pull-ups. In my opinion, everything from all the land training that I've done, pull-ups are the number one exercise that I could do and drop everything else, and it would still cover a lot of what I need for swimming. And then, you reduce the risk of injuries. You have your body there to help you more for swimming because you want to have that strength. You can then focus on the endurance part and developing your cardiovascular system. That swimming can do that for you. I don't think you need to take up running as well, but it helps. Things like that. So there are plenty of stuff that we could talk about, I'm sure. Like I said, I'm very enthusiastic by it, but I will allow you to ask more questions because your questions are more interesting than what I have to say.
That's good. It's a couple of things you touched on there, like warming up before a session. Like I'll wake up, well, I get up way earlier than I need to before a training session in the morning, but I'll do 5-10 minutes of kind of like a yoga routine just to go through those different movements and warm up the muscles and the tendons and stretch a bit, particularly through the shoulders, hips, back. And I find that makes a big difference prior to training early in the morning. And then strength training, I think, like the last 3.5 years, I've started to be consistent with gym, 2 to 3 sessions a week. And the first 6 months were quite frustrating because I kept injuring myself from going too heavy too early. So I didn't build up progressively enough. But then once I had a bit more time under my belt, and then I just progressed a bit more slowly with the weights. now it's like I rarely, well, I don't get injured from the gym, but I rarely get like uh, pull my back. I rarely have those sort
Exactly.
of injuries.
Exactly.
And I think as we get older, and this is something that I'm realize now, I'm late 30s, but in your 20s, like generally, if you're active, you've got good strength, you don't get injured, things are good. But I think for adults, it's something that really should be considered doing at
Yeah.
least 2 sessions a week
And
of some sort of strength.
there's science about it as well. It's not just what we experience or personal experience. There's science that supports all this. In my swim journey, I also like to read a lot. So I like to read scientific stuff about swimming and technique, but also anatomy, physiology, and biology as well. And one of the articles that I stumbled on was about this aspect, the aging process how the aging process affects muscles, tendons, ligaments, and bones, and they all react differently. And I was surprised to find. I mean, maybe not a surprise because I was already feeling it, but the muscles have the least problem to adapt, whereas tendons are one of the worst, and then require more diligence. And in swimming, you want to make yourself as long as possible. So you want your tendons to be flexible. That means you want your tendons to be warmed up, and there's no blood flow for tendons. There's no they're not vascularized. So you need to warm up the muscles around them for that warmth to translate into the tendons, so they become more flexible. So all the joints and so on. So the stretching part that you were mentioning, I believe it's really important, especially if you feel that you're developing injuries. Most of the injuries in swimming, as you were saying in many of your videos, they come from some technique element that you're doing improperly. And you're crossing the midline, then you start pulling, you're turning some outside rotation into an internal rotation, and bam, you start pulling on a tendon somewhere. And when that happens, it's both strange but also difficult to fix, because you want to continue swimming. You should find whatever you're doing, let's say, wrong, technique in swimming in order to stop doing that, but also work on outside of the pool to strengthen that part of the body. The shoulder is an incredibly complex joint, as you know. They have so many things, but one of the good things about it is the same thing. Is because it's an incredibly complex thing, there are many muscles around it. If you damage one tendon, and again, this is scientifically supported as well, you can use or strengthen the other muscles around it in order to take over functions of the damaged part and continue over. My physiotherapist was a very funny guy, but also incredibly talented. I showed him the MRI that I had just done a few months ago of my shoulder, and there's so many things happening there. Apparently, I have 2 chronic tendinitis, a ligament that has a quasi-complete rupture. There's a slap tear, which is a labrum tear, that started forming. That apparently that's the biggest problem, and a few other things and so on. And I was scared when I read that. I thought I should probably stop swimming. This can't go on, but I didn't feel that bad. But it got to the point where it was hurting during sleep, things like that. So I showed the MRI to my physiotherapist. Alejandro Torres is his name. Just a shout out. And then he goes, "Yeah, don't worry about it. There's so many things happening in everybody's shoulders. Anyone who has an MRI in the shoulder will discover tons of things. Chronic doesn't mean permanent, so we can fix that and so on. Probably the slap tear is the most important. That we should work on that. You work outside of the pool, but you have to be very careful what you do in the pool, because you just bring it back if you continue doing the same things. And you spoke about this in many of your videos. Technique is such an important element in this sport because it's extremely repetitive. So anything that you're doing slightly off adds up and can become a big problem. Whereas many other sports where movements are much more varied, they don't tend to be big problems. And swimming may not cause problems, but it can certainly make things worse because of that. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I wanted to mention this because I think is important, especially for adults, as you were saying, to take the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in terms of the shoulder blades and those muscles surrounding it, when people tend to fatigue, they lose the control through those movements. Like the shoulder blade starts to go into positions where they're not as strong, and they're having to use these sort of weaker muscles, and it puts them in that compromised position. So I think particularly with the TheraBands, if you can just build some strength through those muscles that are supporting the shoulder blades, that's a big one, as well as obviously the right technique. Because there's so many people that I see at clinics and they're like, oh, my left shoulder's hurting here. Is there anything technically related to that? And we look at their video, and 9 times out of 10, it's super obvious of why they're getting that issue. It's in plain sight. Yeah. So if you are having issues with your shoulders, good chance it is technically related. Alex, anything else that you think would be worthwhile for people listening to this in order to either get quicker, improve their swimming? Anything that you've picked up along the way?
Yeah, I'm looking through my notes because I found the questions to be very good, and I made some notes on this. Let me see if there's anything that is worth mentioning now. I would say with adult swimming, we tend to focus on parts of the stroke rather than, let's say, take a whole course of swimming and not think about just go through and finish the course and improve the whole thing like holistically. Someone who ends up looking at the videos is probably looking to improve some part of the stroke and so on. What I think is important is to find a way to identify actually what you're struggling with. It's not always obvious. It's because if you have been swimming until a certain point, you already feel natural with whatever you're doing. So you should, I would recommend getting feedback from someone. Either you send them the videos and them pointing them out to you, and then you work on those. But then the next step is when you're changing something, it needs to feel weird. If it doesn't feel weird, you're not changing it. And I discovered this early on. And then you insist on that weirdness for, as long as you need until it doesn't feel weird anymore. And maybe couple it with feedback while you're doing it, such that you don't come back to, what you're doing previously. So one thing was this, to just look for the weird feeling and get feedback all the time, because we can't see ourselves in water, and you need to feel, it needs to feel weird. It shouldn't feel natural whenever you change something. The other part, maybe when people look for drills. So I wouldn't recommend someone as an adult taking up swimming to do what I did, to start with clips and insist on those parts, and then find other clips and insist on other parts. That's what I was doing essentially. I was looking at one technique element and then in the pool the next day and working on those and so on until it felt a little bit better, and then changing it and so on. Suggesting drills, and perhaps this is one criticism I have with most clips that are available on YouTube, is that a lot of them are suggesting drills. And yours are better because you say, if this hurts and so on, then you might want to work on this and so on. And the aspect that I found I was missing was the drill itself is helpful, but because I'm a beginner, I don't know how to incorporate that drill into a larger set or into a program that then helps me actually develop, right? So your full program is very good at this because it's very structured, and you do this and you have sets to work on. But for someone looking to take bits and pieces to improve one part of the stroke, they would still need a full set. Don't just work on drills. As a beginner, we don't know what else to do besides the drill. And you always need to do some swimming between drills. After you work on technique, you do some swimming as well to translate it and so on and so forth. I think we talked about this warm up and so on. I have a few more notes here, but probably running out of time.
Yeah, I think that's great. In terms of drills, I think the mistake I see a lot of people making is that they do the drills without the thought of what they're actually focusing on and the purpose of it. They just do the drill, but all right, what am I actually trying to focus on here? But with almost every drill, you could have 5, 6 different things that you're working on with it. So you want to make sure that you're working on something that's specific to you. For example, a 6-1-6 drill or 6-kick switch. I use that drill a lot, but it depends on the person in terms of what I want them to focus on with it. It might just be your alignment. It might just be the position of your hand in front, so you're not up too high. It could be the rotation. There's so much stuff you can work on with different drills. So it's about knowing the purpose of it.
Yeah. So the technique and the drills are super important. And then, in my opinion, so what I discovered was working and not working. Don't focus on too many things at a time. If you want to focus on kick, then focus on kick and find drills that focus on kick. The 616, for instance, that you mentioned is an incredible drill. Whenever I was doing just drills in the beginning, it always felt okay. I didn't feel like I was doing it. But when I was translating and I was trying to do swimming, it didn't feel as great anymore. So make sure that you're doing enough swimming between drills, and that you have this gradual transition between drills and swimming so that your brain can learn to let go and you rely on the feeling. So you learn that. And maybe one other aspect that I would encourage is, after you do enough drill with swimming and so on, where is the easy part, do that part where you allow yourself to feel the water very easily, very nicely. Don't do the drills at too big of a speed, or don't force yourself. If you feel that the pace is too high, slow down. But after you're done with that technical part, try to actually get into a regime where you are getting tired. So, swim enough so that your cardiovascular system is being pushed, and then focus on the technique, because you want to be able to maintain technique when you're tired. That's maybe one of the biggest aspects in racing, right? If you're not dead by the end, you touch the wall, then you probably haven't given it enough, or you had more in the tank. And the other part is, I feel the learning part happens best when you're tired, because that's when the brain can't actually think about coordinating anything anymore. You're too tired to do it. So if you can force yourself to still maintain technique when you're tired, don't injure yourself, obviously, but I think the concept of what I'm describing is clear enough. I think it's important to get into a regime where you have to maintain technique when the body is tired as well, and then you learn more. It cements the technique better. And having the feedback, if you can have someone to look at you and do that, send the video or someone with you in the pool, would be even better. Then the progression would be almost as a given.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Well, thanks so much for sharing your journey over the last couple of years, and lots of good takeaways there. And yeah, I appreciate you jumping on and reaching out as well, because when I saw that before and after video, like it looks like a different person. Like, it really, really huge improvement. So the fact that someone can do that in a fairly short space of time as an adult is outstanding. So congratulations on that improvement.
I think it's doable, and I think it's important. And what you're doing, I think, is important. It's also very hard to make adults believe that it's possible. It's very possible. You just have to obsess a little bit, find the time, and then keep to a schedule. That's also important. If you don't feel like it, then maybe that's the right time to go and actually do it. Keep to a schedule, and the improvements are there to be read. It's an incredible sport. It's hard, but that's the nice part about it.
Yeah, that's right. There's always something to learn, and it's always challenging. So, Alex, thanks so much for being a guest on here.
Thank you very much for having me, Brent. And it was lovely to chat to you. Thank you very much for the work you have been doing, and thank you very much for the free videos that you're posting, which are incredibly, incredibly useful.
That's my pleasure.